If you want to make perfect crepes every time you make them, then this is the video for you because we're going to talk about the top 5 utensils you will need to make crepes like a pro, and I can't wait to share them with you. Hello, my name is Naim. I am a crepe maker. And this is my channel where I share everything about crepes from sweet to savory, simple to advanced. So, if you love crepes or want to learn more about them, subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Now, let's start with the first tool. Now, it might seem odd to begin with a kitchen scale, but hear me out. The reason I am saying that you need to have a kitchen scale is because the weight of your ingredients is way more important than the volume when making crepe batter. Why? Because flour, for example, can be scooped in different ways. It can be scooped loosely or tightly, which means if you were to use a measuring cup to measure flour, you will end up with different amounts of flour depending on how you scoop it. But when you use a kitchen scale, there is no room for error because it will always be accurate. This is very important when making crepes because the ratio between the liquid and the dry ingredients needs to be perfect in order to obtain the right consistency in your crepe batter. You want to avoid at all costs what we call in French les gros, which means literally the little balls or the lumps in your crepe batter. These lumps come from too much flour and not enough liquid, and they will ruin your crepes because one, they will make your crepes tough and chewy instead of being thin and delicate, and they will be impossible to spread because they will break your crepe and it will look really ugly. Nobody wants to eat an ugly crepe. Now the good news is that if you notice that your crepe batter has some lumps in it, you can always fix it by adding a little bit more liquid, whisking vigorously. Now I do realize that most people don't own a kitchen scale. If that is the case, you can still go ahead and use a measuring cup and just try to be consistent in the way you scoop your flour. If you use a spoon to scoop your flour, try to make sure that you don't leave any space between the scoops, or if you use a measuring cup, make sure that you level off the excess flour. Now, moving on to the second utensil that you need in order to make great crepes, and that is a whisk. Now, you might think that any whisk would work, but actually, there are different types of whisks, and each one of them are used for different purposes. In order to make great crepes, you need to have a whisk that has a flexible wire, because the thinner the wire, the better it is to incorporate air into your crepe batter. But you don't want a whisk that is too flexible either, because then you won't be able to mix well. Now, if you don't have a flexible whisk, you can still go ahead and use a regular whisk. Just make sure that you mix your crepe batter longer so that you incorporate enough air into your crepe batter. And speaking of mixing, you should mix your crepe batter for about 2 minutes, and here is why. When you mix your crepe batter, you incorporate air into it, which will make your crepes light and fluffy and not dense and heavy. But you also want to mix your crepe batter long enough so that the gluten develops, and here is why. Gluten gives structure to your crepes and makes them elastic so that they don't tear apart when you spread them on the frying pan. So if you don't mix your crepe batter long enough, your crepes will be tough and chewy because there will not be enough gluten in them, and they will also be very fragile and break very easily when you spread them on the frying pan. So to make sure that your crepes turn out perfectly, make sure to mix your crepe batter for 2 minutes using a whisk. Now, if you don't have a whisk, you can still go ahead and use a fork or even a blender. Just make sure that you mix the batter long enough so that you incorporate enough air into it. Now, moving on to the third tool that you will need in order to make great crepes, and that is a ladle. Now, when it comes to ladles, there are many different shapes and sizes. For crepes, you want to use a ladle that is big enough so that you can scoop enough batter for one crepe, but you don't want it to be too big because then you will end up using too much batter and you will end up making very thick crepes. Now, if you don't have a crepe-specific ladle, you can still go ahead and use a regular ladle. Just make sure that you adjust the amount of batter you use so that you obtain the thickness of crepes that you desire. Now, another important thing to remember about ladles is that they can be made out of different materials. For crepes, I prefer to use a ladle that is made out of silicone because it is non-stick and it is also heat resistant. Now, if you don't have a silicone ladle, you can still go ahead and use a regular ladle. Just make sure that you grease it before you use it and you will be fine. The fourth tool you will need in order to make great crepes is a frying pan. Now, when it comes to frying pans, There are many different materials, and we have one that is best for making crepes, and that is a non-stick frying pan. Non-stick frying pans are great for crepes because they require very little fat in order to cook your crepes, and they are also really easy to clean up after. But not all non-stick frying pans are created equal. Some of them have a really bad coating that can be very toxic for you. So, in order to make sure that you have a safe non-stick frying pan, you want to look for two things. First, make sure that the handle is made out of a material that is oven safe, because if it is not, then the handle might contain some sort of glue that can be toxic for you. And second, make sure that the non-stick coating is PFOA free, because PFOA is a chemical that is known to cause cancer and is really bad for you. Once you have a good quality non-stick frying pan, make sure to lightly grease it before cooking your crepes. And to make sure that your crepes cook evenly, you want to make sure that your pan is the right size for your stove burner. So if your pan is too small for your stove burner, the heat will not be distributed evenly and your crepes will burn on the sides. Now, if you don't have a good quality non-stick frying pan, you can still go ahead and use a regular frying pan. Just make sure that you grease it really well and that you lower the heat to medium or low so that your crepes don't burn. Now, moving on to the fifth and final tool that you will need to make great crepes, and that is a spreader. Now, when it comes to crepe spreaders, there are many different shapes and sizes. For crepes, you want to look for something that is thin because you want to be able to spread your crepe batter thinly on the frying pan without any effort. Now, a lot of times people like to use measuring cups as a crepe spreader, but they are not ideal because they are too big and they are also too thick. A better option would be to use a kitchen utensil that is called a Maurice. Now, I do realize that not everybody has a Maurice, so you can still go ahead and use a regular measuring cup. Just make sure that you only fill it halfway so that you don't use too much batter. So those are the 5 tools that you will need in order to make perfect crepes every time. Now, I did mention in this video that if you don't have certain tools, you can still go ahead and make crepes, but the quality of your crepes might suffer a little bit. And that being said, if you really want to become a crepe master and make restaurant quality crepes at home now, if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up because it really helps me out. And also make sure to subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell so that you get notified every time I post a new video. And lastly, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.